SUV segment. Now that's a segment that's not very crowded. You've got the Compass and the Citroen vying for space. Now you've got a new entrant into that segment. This is the Hyundai Tucson. Now the Tucson nameplate is something you'd probably be familiar with because this started off life in India way back in 2004 when the first generation came in, and we've seen 3 generations of the Tucson in India, coming down to this, the 4th generation. What I do like about the Tucson nameplate is that the first generation was a very quirky looking SUV and it was very competent as well. This one though is probably the sharpest Tucson design, the sharpest Hyundai design language we've ever seen on the Tucson. Apart from its good looks though, how is it to drive? Well, that's what I'm here in Bengaluru around the Nandi Hills to see what the Tucson feels like, well, when you're behind the steering wheel. So, shall we get on with it then? Now, before we go on to the driving part, let me just quickly take you through the design elements on this because it is fantastic to look at. And while we've gone through this before, here's a quick refresher. Very interesting front-end design. That grille has got that parametric look, but what stands out clearly are these headlamps, or rather these driving lamp units, which are integrated into the design of that front grille. Now, if you look at the grille closely, you'll see it's got that nickel chromium paneling, it's got the nickel chromium plating on them, and that same nickel chromium is also inserted inside these lamp elements, effectively giving it that blacked out feel, or at least looking complementary, looking the same as the grille. And these are the LED driving lamps. The headlamps are here for high beam and low beam. Lots of LEDs in there, but great throw and of course great visibility as well. And moving on from the front end, full of creases on this new design language from Hyundai, creases running across the hood, creases running across the fenders, across the length of the bodywork. On the front fender, there are these 2 grooves out here. The same grooves are also captured on the rear fender. Now these of course make it look great, but they also disrupt the airflow running over the body, giving it better a coefficient of drag. Now if you look at that shoulder line, which starts off, that crease that starts off from the middle of the door and extends its way all the way to the tail end, you'll notice that it wraps itself around and well continues along the other side and ends on the other driver's door. Now here's the interesting design language, a new element that's been incorporated by Hyundai, and that's these tail lamps. You've got this lovely wraparound effect along with that LED strip that runs along the length of the tailgate. When it lights up, it's pretty impressive to see, but along with these 2 flanges, it creates a very distinct signature. What I do like also is that these geometric patterns, they are conveyed all across the car, heightening the sense of design and of course giving it its distinct identity. The Tucson then, well, great looking on the outside, but let me quickly take you on the inside and let's see what that is also all about. Once you step inside this cabin, very clearly what you can see is that it's luxurious, it's well appointed, it's got these fantastic design elements. I do especially like this entire wraparound effect of the dashboard that extends and cocoons the occupants at the front. I do like this infotainment panel right here, the instrument cluster right behind the steering wheel. Now, both of these are 10.25-inch screens, but they're very well, they enhance the look and feel of this cabin. This entire panel, for that matter, cascading from the dashboard down to the center console, is a very impressive design. Nonetheless, the interiors, well, they just don't complement the exterior design, because the exteriors, it's very angular, it's got a lot of geometric shapes, very sharp lines and creases. But in here, those lines are mellow, they're softer, they don't feel as sharp as the exterior design. And in that sense, it's a very stark contrast to what you see on the outside of the Tucson. Now, here's an interesting bit. The instrument cluster, well, you can change the look and feel of that cluster right there by selecting the drive mode that you want to be in, whether it's in the smart mode, the sport mode, the normal mode, or the eco mode. It changes the look and feel. It gives you a different perspective every time you want to change the drive mode. Now, if you look closely, you see this entire section within these 2 grooves. Well, they've got plenty of holes in them, and that's also because those holes are used for the aircon vents to throw airflow onto the passengers. So it's not just the 1, 2, 3 and 4 larger vents, but also these smaller vents that run across the length of the dashboard that effectively throw airflow, pass airflow into this cabin and enhance the climate control system within this living area. Overall then, this is a nice comfortable cabin to be in, and I think this would be a great seat or a great space to be in, especially if you're headed out on a nice long road trip. Hyundai's new Tucson. This is the 4th generation of the Tucson that's coming to India ever since its launch in 2004, like I mentioned earlier. But this new SUV has been developed on Hyundai's 3rd generation compact or other N3 platform. And what this platform essentially does is it enhances safety, space, comfort, drivability, and a host of other features that you would want in an SUV of this order. What makes the Tucson unique in this segment is the fact that it's the only one to offer level 2 advanced driver assistance systems, in addition to an all-wheel drive powertrain, and of course you get a choice of both petrol and diesel engines. Now the Tucson that I'm driving, well, this comes with the 2-liter common rail direct injection diesel, and this makes about 186 PS of max power with 416 Newton meters of max torque, which is more than adequate for any driving duties. The petrol, on the other hand, well, that's got about 156 PS of max power with 192 Newton meters of max torque, which may not sound like much, but it's more than enough. The Hyundai Tucson will be offered with just 2 transmission options. There is an 8-speed automatic, which is mated to the diesel engine, and there's the 6-speed automatic, which is combined with the petrol. Previous generations of the Tucson, from what I recollect, had slightly softer suspension settings, so there was a fair amount of front-end dive, body roll that you'd sense in those SUVs, but a lot of those have been ironed out in the new Tucson. It very carefully balances bad road ride quality with the dynamic stability you'd need driving at highway speeds. Hyundai is one of those companies that is constantly under fire for not having the best safety systems in their cars. And of course, this stands true because several of their cars haven't done too well at international crash safety tests. But the Tucson, well, takes away all of that. You get a host of safety features on board, like 6 airbags, you've got, well, hill descent control, and of course, a crash structure that is probably one of the best you can get in this segment. But the most important aspect is the advanced driver assistance system. And this adds in a host of features to ensure your driving is as safe as it can be. Now, we've already taken you through what those features are capable of. The more interesting ones for me are the adaptive cruise control system, where the car automatically senses a vehicle ahead of it and will slow down without you having to intervene, without you having to step on the brake pedal. And then it automatically accelerates as well as soon as it sees that obstacle or that vehicle ahead of you has moved aside and given you way. Now, apart from that, of course, there are several other interesting features. You've got the blind spot monitors, another feature that I quite like, because you can see on the instrument cluster right behind the steering wheel, both of those pods, well, they turn to screens which uses the cameras mounted on the rear view mirror, on the outside rear view mirrors, to indicate if there is a vehicle coming up close to you in your blind spot. So several features like that will enhance the safety quotient in the new Tucson. Now, of the two engine options, well, undoubtedly it's the diesel that I think will be the more popular choice. But the petrol, well, That's absolutely essential, especially for the NCR region, where diesels don't have a very long shelf life. The diesel engine, nonetheless, it's quite competent, it's torquey, it's also a little noisy at low revs. But once you get up to cruising speeds on the highway, doing about 80 to around 100 kilometers an hour, well, it's quite an efficient performer. The one thing that I miss in the Hyundai Tucson though is that this SUV does not come with the paddles. The Tucson also offers you a host of driving modes, roughly around 7 of them, and this has to do with both on-road driving as well as off-road driving. Now on on-road driving, you can press a button and select between eco, normal, sport or smart. And then there are the terrain modes where you can select between snow, mud or sand conditions to drive on. Now here's my one problem. Snow, a very small portion of the country experiences snow, gets snowfall. Just about 10% of India, especially up in the extreme northern belts, receives snowfall. So that mode is a bit redundant. And I do believe what Hyundai should have done was to have renamed that mode, because effectively what it does is it gives you an immense amount of grip in extremely low traction surfaces. And while the rest of the country, experiences heavy downpours, especially during the monsoons, you could drive in some extremely tricky situations. If you've experienced flooding in your region, in those conditions, you can slip it into snow mode and use the all-wheel drive to get you better traction to ensure that you don't get yourself into a mess. In the on-road driving modes, shifting between eco and normal mode, you can sense a few changes taking place. One of them is the way the engine responds. Responses are much slower, more refined, and the steering, adds in a little bit of weight. But the shift from normal to sport mode, when you do that, you can sense an immense amount of weight coming in, a lot more directness coming into the steering system. However, the performance aspect, you don't get a very strong sense of a change happening over there. What I do like is the fact that you've also got that all-wheel drive powertrain, which can do fairly decent off-roading. Let me show you how. The Tucson is about 1.8 meters wide, and on a trail this narrow, that width can get quite tricky. But here's where the cameras effectively come into play and allow you to see where you're going. I'm trying hard to avoid the field that I'm driving right next to. Don't want to kill the crops. At the same time, trying very hard not to go overboard and slide down that drop. The Tucson has got multiple off-road modes. It's got snow, sand and mud mode. And it's got about 190 to 195 mm of ground clearance. That may sound like it's a lot, but do keep in mind that it's also got reasonably long overhangs. So approach and departure angles can be a little tricky. Now here's what I'm trying to do. There's a severe lip in there. Wow, I'm trying not to scrape the underbelly. That means moving through this slowly. Ouch! I did hear a bit of it scrape, but we came away clean. Well, the Tucson makes a very compelling case for itself. Now, it enters into a segment that isn't densely populated. You've got the Citroen C5 Aircross, you've got the Jeep Compass, you've got the Volkswagen Tiguan, and then of course, there's the Tucson. But to say that the Tucson is better than all of them, well, that would be a bit premature, and I'd reserve that opinion for when we do a comprehensive comparison test between these four SUVs. Nonetheless, if you are looking for a car, did I forget to mention its striking good looks? You're looking for a great cabin space with great interiors. You're looking for, well, good engines, both diesel and petrol, which are refined, frugal, and of course powerful and torquey as well. You're looking for something that offers you, well, all-wheel drive, an all-wheel drive powertrain. You're looking for something that offers you the advanced driver assistance systems and a ton of features which Hyundai traditionally puts into all of its vehicles. Well, the Tucson probably ticks all those boxes for you.